Today we'll be talking about lighting design. Chapters 12 and 13, Lighting Design. Objectives and Outcomes. Read chapters 12 and 13. Watch the embedded videos. Understand the purpose of light. 4 controllable properties of light. 4 functions of light. How colors and light work. They are different from paint colors. And lighting equipment. The purpose of light. To help tell the story through illumination. Light helps create a visible stage picture, specializing moments for dramatic impact of production. I'm just going to riff on what that means. So to help tell a story through illumination, a lot of times, like in the most basic sense, lighting will tell you if it is daytime or if it is nighttime. Great. Lighting can also tell you, it can help if there's a moment in a play where there's a dream sequence. That lighting will probably look way different than what was before in a reality moment of the play. So it helps tell the story in that way. Light helps create a visible stage picture. Yeah. And then specializing moments for dramatic impact. Is there a moment when a character is alone and they're saying a monologue on stage and like everything in the world behind them needs to go out and they just need to be the focus of attention? Lighting would be great for that. 4 controllable properties of light. Intensity. Candle power of a light source. A measurement of the amount of light, luminous flux emitted in a given direction. Perception of intensity or the brightness of a light. So your light could be at 50%, so it's not totally super hot, and hot is like, like bright on you. So it could be not at 100, and it's like a dimmer switch in your living room. If you're trying to create a different ambiance and you don't want it to be at 100 and you want it to be like you're watching a movie and you need it to be a little moody, you take it to 50 or something. So intensity is the same. More sophisticated than your living room dimmer, but it's the same kind of concept of like how you want the light on stage to look. You can control that intensity. Distribution. The direction of where the light is coming from and the distribution of light onto the stage. The front, back, side, top lights. This could be a moment, well, you have lights everywhere, but you can decide on when and where you want the lights to be on. Is there's one of the moments where you see, like in musicals especially, where they have like people will sing in little areas and then all of a sudden like the other 2 people are dark because we're not telling their story anymore and one person's singing, then the other person joins in and then all of a sudden they're popped on, and then the third person is popped on, but they're all in their own little pools of light because they're in different areas. Your light can be distributed differently to show a different type of storytelling. You can control the colors of the lights. You control this by either old school way where you have gels inside the lights, and gels are, like, I'll show you later. Or color mixing, where if you have a more sophisticated or lighting instruments now, you can do color mixing just right in the lighting equipment. And then you have CCT, which is the correlated color temperature. And then you can control the movement, the physical movement of a beam of light, or a change in the previous 3 properties. We have moving lights now. Not all lights move, but there are lights that do move, and then you can help. It can move while action is happening, or you can use the same instrument and have it move at some point. It does make a noise at some point to then be used in a different spot. Four functions of light. The visibility, the responsibility of the designer to provide enough light for the audience to see the performers. And as mentioned in that video where Ian had talked about lighting, visibility is different for dance and different for theater. So in dance, you want to illuminate the bodies, and in theater, you definitely want to see the face. The motivation, stage lighting looks natural for the setting. A realistic interior scene at night. The stage lights should appear to come from practical lights fitting on stage, such as table lamps or chandeliers. So yes, if the stage is at night, you will obviously have lights that will make it look a lot brighter, and you're not getting your light from the lamp on stage. But if it's night, maybe you have some blue lights in the back on a cyc or something, and then maybe you have on the inside of the room, wherever the actors are, you have a table lamp, maybe some candelabras if there's like an older play, but they're electrical candelabras, or yeah, something like that to help make it seem like it's nighttime. So the audience member, when they're looking at it, they'll be like, oh, that light is on, therefore it's probably night. Composition, the creation of a series of interrelated images which assist with the director in presenting his interpretation of the play. And the mood, the reflection of the ever-changing emotional content of the play. It is, in a way, very close to the style of the production. If you're with some of your fairy tales, you are doing darker versions because maybe you're doing the grim version of the fairy tale, but you do a darker version of the play, so your lighting will presumably match the mood of the type of story you're telling, and it's going to be darker versus a sunny Disney version of maybe the same. Visibility. Must see the actor's face. Focus areas should be bright. Keep light off areas that distract or derail the moment. Motivation. Light should look natural for the setting. Example, realism, light should come from practicals. Outdoors, morning light versus moonlight. Composition. Gives the actors form, accents the sets, no flat looks. Mood. Composition plus motivation plus visibility equals the mood. Dramatic, stylized, simple, create intimacy. Questions a lighting designer should ask. What is the genre and mood of the story? This is something you would ask from the director, but perhaps because designers read beforehand, they read the script 1 to 2 times to get an idea, they can riff with the director and be like, hey, this is what I think, and the director will be like, I agree, I disagree, and then you guys can kind of come up with something together and you're on the same page. Because you want to match the mood of the director and what the director and actors are doing in rehearsal. How do the characters relate to one another? Harmony, conflict. Does this change anything with lighting? If 2 characters don't like each other, is it always going to be darker when they're on stage? Is it going to create mood? Is it going to be nicer on stage? What does that do? So even though, and again, I think with all the research that a designer has to do, they can come up with, they need to think about script analysis as well, because it will help them, and maybe they'll think of something different for whatever their aspect of design is, just with lighting as well. What is the weather? What is the time of day? If it's a sunny day, it's going to look like a sunny day. If it's daytime but it's cloudy out, that lighting will look different. Are practicals needed? Sconces, table lamps, chandeliers, candles. Some plays, you never see any of that, but a lot of plays you do. We did a show here a couple years ago. It was The Flick, and we had sconces on the wall, and it was a movie theater, and so we also had some of those lights on the stairs. Just made sense. The next show we're doing is Bob. It is a weird, who knows what kind of like space and time we're in. There are some like netting lights, but it was just to add a part of the mismatch stuff on stage. But so like that type of play does not need practicals. Gels, or filters, are colored sheets that are put in front of a source. It gives off color or balance corrects a light source. And then fun fact for you, gels used to be made out of like actual gelatin back in the day, but now we use some sort of plastic that doesn't really burn. Amazing technology. And then when you're a lighting designer, you have to think about what colors will look like on different skin tones. And here's an example of one woman, or a white woman, and like you can see how the different lights are affecting how her skin looks and how she looks under that light. Gobos, templates or patterns. A metal pattern that, when placed inside the light, throws a shadow pattern on stage. So if you've ever seen windows or the trees or something like leaves on the ground, it was a gobo that was placed inside a lighting instrument. And now it's become popular for people to get them for their weddings or your corporate event. And then so when you walk into the room, there's a cutout of your company's name or the bride or groom or whomever, and it's on the floor. And you see, or the wall maybe, and you see the pattern, and that is a gobo that's placed in that light. Additional definitions. Hanging is tightening a C-clamp onto the lighting designer's chosen electrical batten. Circuiting, plugging in a light into a dimmer. Focusing, adjusting lights to their appropriate acting areas on stage. So thinking about hanging and focusing. So when you start to do, all designers have to do a load-in for a show. And for lighting, you plot out where you want everything, and then you, with your master electrician, your crew, you then have to place all of the lights, hang them on the beams or the battens, and it looks different for a proscenium theater versus a black box theater. For proscenium theater, you usually, the lights are in the grid, and they're on rails, and they can be brought down by the rails, and then you hang them on the floor. In some cases, you are in a tension grid where you are up there. There's a whole bunch of battens, and you are standing on wires, and you're hanging the lights. And it's a little cramped, and you might hit your head, so careful up there. So your job is to hang the lights first, and you circuit everything. You run powers to everything. You run everything to the board, and then you need to focus the lights, which is figuring out where they need to be pointed, so then you know that there's coverage all over the stage. And then with your paperwork, you have a list of all this, so you know what lighting instrument, which is numbered, has to the circuit number that it's plugged into. You know how to turn it on and where it should be pointing. And then you also, during focus, drop the color that you want in the light. So then you'll be like, in your paperwork, you'll be like, okay, circuit 3 has this type of lighting instrument with a blue gel inside it, and it's pointing to this stage left area on stage. Dry tech, a day where the director and stage manager and the lighting designer and sound designers, you could decide where sound cues and light cues kind of go, and you let the director see what the look on stage might be, but without actors. So you're just pointing lights and listening to sounds in an empty space at the level they're going to be at and where they're supposed to be at. A wet tech is walking through lighting and sound cues with actors. And we don't normally always call it wet tech, you just call it tech. A lot of times companies don't have dry techs anymore because people think it's a waste of time. Because if you're not seeing the actual actor on stage and seeing how the color reacts to their costume or their face or whatever, it could be a waste of time. Some people like it, some people don't. It's really up to the company. Dark time. Time allotted for the lighting designer to focus and program their show cues. You don't want a whole bunch of scenic people going in and out of the theater, opening the door and ruining your focus, concentration. So dark time is important for a lighting designer because they can just sit in that dark theater and figure out what they need. And then cues, each change in the lighting, usually involving a shift in a controllable property, called by the stage manager and changed by the light board operator. How they are blend seamlessly into a show. That was very clunky in words, sorry about that. But a cue is, that light cue 1 is something different from light cue 3. There is a change on stage. The audience doesn't know what it is, and honestly, to be perfectly frank with you, light cue 1 is probably pre-show, and light cue 3 might be house to half, so then the lights would come down to house to half, and then light cue 5 would probably be blackout, and then light cue, I don't know, maybe 7 would be top of show. So you have these cues, and the stage manager has it in their book, you have it, the lighting designer has it in their cue sheet, so they know just in case, but your board op does not know. They just have to click the button when they're told. But so that's just something, so then you know what each cue does and where it should go. And you have something called paper tech with the stage manager where you go over the script with them and you're like, this is where I imagine these cues, this is what they do, and this is when they need to be called. And called meaning a stage manager basically is the conductor of tech for the show. So that's when they say the things and conducting the action.